For me, it's all about ownership, building the IP, building the franchise, building the ecosystem without gatekeepers.
In Laurel Canyon, we sat with Bill McCullough, a filmmaker turned builder who's worn every hat.
Going from HBO to GoPro to the NFL to FaZe Clan.
11 Sports Emmys on the shelf.
The one that's the most special to me, I think, is the composer.
Because it's just like, holy shit,
somebody likes my music.
A band with his wife, and 3 kids he calls his best production. Bill's through line is trust and adaptation.
I cut for more than 10,000 hours. They would come in on Friday night at 6 o'clock. We'd have 2 hours to cut it, and then it goes right into the machine and on the air. How can I parlay this into something bigger?
He believes that metrics sharpen instinct. They don't replace it.
You know, Do Perfect is, we should do a collab with them. I'm like, you're absolutely right, we should. Yes! But here's the deal. They're gonna own the content, and it's gonna be on their channels. From the NFL, it's like, what? We don't own it? It's not on our channels? I'm like, no, man. We did it. 26 million views in 1 week.
This is Bill McCullough. This is The Messy Middle.
I am so grateful to have you on The Messy Middle, man.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and look forward to our conversation, man.
Yeah.
Welcome to Laurel Canyon.
We're in Laurel Canyon, and you know, in this world, we can look at the cameras. You know, it's like it's messy. You
Absolutely.
there are no rules.
No rules.
Right? I think for me, like the big part of why sitting with you was really important was this idea of adaptation. And you know, we have this idea of when we're going to grow up, we're going to be this, and that's what we're going to do, and that's who we'll be. And you find out in life that that's not the world, right? And they don't teach you that.
No.
And a lot of people sometimes will try to just like fit in that role. Some people break through, but this level of adapting that you've done in your career is fascinating. And I really want to start with a question that I'm very curious to get your response on. So what is something about you that nobody would know that really helps define your character and who you are?
Wow. That's a really tough first question, but I think, you know, for me, you know, trust, you know, is something that I'm really, really big on. You know, something that I think I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt and trust them right off the bat, which is sometimes, you know,
good
detrimental.
And bad, right?
Exactly.
Right.
But, you know, I do have faith in humankind. And, you know, for me, it's always about how can I contribute, right? Like not how can I take, how can I contribute? And that goes for, you know, when I'm making films and making social media content, you know, I want to leave this place better than I've found it. And so that's always in my head. And you know, I'm saying to myself, should I trust this person, or, you know, should I not trust this person?
Right.
You know, it's like the world's crazy today, but you know what? It's all we have. And, you know, it's something that I think I've gotten this far in my life with. And yeah, have I gotten burned a couple times? For sure. But, you know, overall, I think I can sleep at night. You know, I can look at my wife in the face and look at my kids and feel pretty good about, you know, what I'm trying to do with my life.
You know, trust, I feel like, breaks that barrier of giving yourself to someone, right, or a project, right?
100%.
And I think if I also like look deeper into that, I think that's what speaks to me when you talk about trust. So that's great. That's good to know. So I'm curious, what are the things that you really are excited about right now that you're putting your hands into? I would say, like in 2 sentences, what are you trying to create next?
Well, I would say this. For me, it's all about ownership. It's all about building the IP, building the franchise, building the ecosystem without gatekeepers. You know, I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about this. And I think the industry is changing so much and has changed, you know, over the last 2 years more than it has over the last 15 years. Really. And, it's shifted focus, going back to your adaptability. Some of it is just built in who I am, right? Always just wanting to kind of be at the forefront of what's next and really looking at the audience, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the key. Where's the audience going?
You're right.
Right. And so that's for me. And so kind of taking all of my experiences, I'm really excited about, this adrenaline tricking league, which is, something it's a sport that's kind of a mix between martial arts, gymnastics, and breakdancing.
Yeah.
The two founders, Jimmy and McGuire Kane, have been doing this for about 10 years. And now we're at the point where we just had an event in Las Vegas. The funding is happening. And so that's something to me, being at the NFL, being at the XFL, being at the NBA, it was always like, it's different because you don't really own it, right?
Yeah.
You're contributing the ideas, but this is something that we can mold. And that's what excites me today, right?
Yeah.
Is just getting something, building something from scratch, owning it, developing it, and seeing other people succeed, and see people flourish. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's this world that some people are able to transition and pivot, where you're like this, you're an editor and you're a director and you're evolving as a creator in general, and then you moved into this like executive position. So as you mentioned, the NFL and your position over there as a VP of creative.
I was VP of marketing.
marketing.
And so I was a creative director.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what you did with the XFL. I'm very curious to get your take. Like, what changed that made you want to do it?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. First, music is my first love, as it is you. So I'm still trying to be a rock star. So that once that happens,
I told him he was.
Yeah,
I told him he was.
That's the goal. But I am, like I said, I'm always kind of looking for what's next, right?
Yeah.
And I started out in live television. I started out at QVC.
Yeah.
I was a PA. Me and Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe was back at QVC in those days, and I was running necklaces and jewelry out to the hosts and, having a great time, and then moved into, the audio, being an audio guy, and then the control room. And then the next thing I know, I was a director, and I was directing live TV, and I moved to New York.
Like at the age of 27, you said.
This was like 22, 23, 24.
Yeah.
Moved to New York when I was about 24 and a half.
Okay.
And then, and so because I've always been editing 4-tracks and, music, right? I mean, it's just been part of who I am. And I said, I'm directing this talk show, and I'm like, hey, I don't have anybody to edit my packages here. I said, why don't you send me to CMX school? Back then it was CMX, the keyboards.
Wow, right.
So I can learn that, because I knew all the gear from me being a director in a TD. And they sent me to school, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
I was just like, man, this is what I want to do. I want to edit. And back in the 90s,
in that world, that space.
Being an editor in New York City was like the shit, man.
Yeah.
It was just like the guys in Beetlejuice and National and all these places were just like, that was the thing.
Yeah.
So, I left QVC, and I got a job offer from HBO to be a night editor at the studio. And I'm like, boom. Packed my bags. I left a smoke trail. I was gone, man. And I loved it, man. It was something that, because I was so passionate about it, very quickly, I started to cut the Chris Rock show. Then I started to cut Inside the NFL. Then I started to cut Real Sports.
Yeah.
Then I cut the Garth Brooks special. Then and I was cutting all the, the Sopranos
stuff,
campaign, all of these things and I was loving it, and loving it. And so, cut to, a couple years earlier when I was a director, and I was a director of operations for QVC. So I'm starting to get that managerial experience in there. I have the live production experience being a director. Now I've got the editing and working on really big premium shows.
Right, with staff.
Yeah, and having that. So
Yeah.
I could see all these things coming together. And for me, it was always about like, I just want to get to that next level. I just want to learn what I can from people, good or bad, and just continue to grow and continue to grow and continue to move forward. And so that has always been where I've been. It's probably the athlete in me.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I'm the freshman. I'm not going to play. Sophomore, you got to play. All right, junior year, I'm starting.
Yeah,
right? So does life not work like that?
Yeah,
like,
it does. 100%.
It just doesn't really. But that's my mentality of just kind of always pushing.
Some people would say, man, you made it.
Yeah.
You smooth sailing now, brother.
Yeah.
You don't need to do anything else, and you didn't do that. No. So what? Let's talk about first being at that level, right? You're running, a whole marketing division with the NFL. You're a creative director. You're a chief creative officer
Yep.
at XFL. You're doing these things. What did you enjoy, and what was it that kind of brought you to a space like, yeah, that's not for me anymore?
Yeah. Well, let me just kind of back up a little bit to explain a little bit inside my head, which may be scary. But I think one of the things that
get messy.
Get messy, man. One of the things that made me a really good editor is I think I'm a really good director and producer, right? So, the typical producer or editor relationship is you walk in with some time codes, and I'm not throwing shade on editors. I'm just saying the relationship was different. When we moved from linear editing to non-linear editing, I think you saw a huge shift in what an editor actually is.
Right.
Because now an editor, you don't need to find a match frame to do a dissolve or fire off GPIs or get the expression to fire off. Now it's about story because I can teach, and kids in 5th grade learn Avid, So it's not about the technical, it's just a tool. It's about the storytelling piece of it. So I think that was what always had separated me, was my ability to produce, direct, and then be able to edit. And then the technical piece was I was just fast.
Right.
I mean, I was still probably the fastest editor out there.
Yeah.
You have to be. Yeah. We would cut the Chris Rock show. They would come in on Friday night at 6:00, with 2 tapes.
And they were definitely on time.
Oh, yeah, exactly right. They would shoot the show right there, come in at 6:00.
Yeah.
We'd have 2 hours to cut it, and then it goes right into the machine and on the air.
Wow.
And so it was just like, you have to be fast. You have to build that skill. And that was linear, non-linear. It wasn't non-linear. But all of those experiences to me, I don't want to say that the creative wasn't the challenge anymore, because I cut for more than 10,000 hours. Like you said, you're just in that room. And when I opened Wonderland Production and I had my 5 rooms, I had my music company, it was probably one of the most creative periods of my life, where I would just come in every single day and create. Even if I didn't have a job to do, we were making music for the library that we would put into our films.
Right.
And so the ability to have some managerial experience, open my own company, combined with the creative experience, I think put me in a little bit of a different category, because I could go into an edit room and talk about, give me a quick time with an alpha, and then I can go in and talk about a P&L in the boardroom. Right. And most people can either do one or the other really well. I think I can kind of encompass both.
It's an incredible skill.
And for me, it was the creative was, why are we doing the creative? Tell me why. Who are we trying to reach? What are we trying to do? Because then I can give you some of my opinion on what the content should be. And that just kind of kept growing and kept growing. And, the hardest thing for me was getting out of the chair, because I built a brand and people, I want Bill to edit. I want Bill to edit. I want Bill to edit. Okay, 10 years later, I'm still editing, but I'm doing, other things too, and trying to kind of get to that point. And so, it was a long road. I enjoyed it. It was all necessary, to get to the point where once I had the opportunity to be an executive, I was able to pool all of my skills and even learn from, the executives and corporate culture, sometimes what not to do, 90% of the time, what not to do. But that was what I was always kind of looking at the opportunity. Well, how can I parlay this into something bigger? And that my career went like this, but it was very purposeful in terms of going from HBO to GoPro to the NFL to FaZe Clan to, there was a method to that madness.
That point where you wanted to pivot to GoPro. And the reason I wanted to highlight that is some things I didn't know when, before sitting with you and talking was that intention behind, like, where are we what are we doing? And what does digital really mean at the time when really GoPro was not, I don't want to say like getting up and going, but it, to some extent it was, right? It was already creating content and all that stuff. Now I just wanted to refine it and build it out. So what was it for you that kind of like, I want to move in this way? And why was that influential to what you're doing today?
Great question. So while I was at HBO for the second time, because I was there as an editor in the 90s, came back as a VP creative director in 2010, between 2010 and 2015. So I noticed, we had lost inside the NFL. We had lost Wimbledon. Floyd Mayweather went to Showtime. Manny Pacquiao went to Showtime. I'm like, wait a second, what's going on here? We're going the wrong way, know? And at the same time, you're seeing companies like GoPro just start to explode, not on television, but through digital. And also at that point, 2012, YouTube had opened up, the bandwidth had opened up. So video was starting to flow in a way that it had never had before. And ironically, Ken Hirschman was the president of HBO Sports at that point. And about a month before I left, he had sent out an email saying, and it was a GoPro sizzle reel, saying, hey, we need more of this type of content. And so little did I know that I was leaving to go to GoPro. But that was really it. And you know, it was moving, you know, my 3 kids and my wife across the country to start over. And I'm, like I said, that's my best production ever is my family. And luckily they were all for it, you know, and we packed up and we moved across the country and went to GoPro. And, you know, that, I had been in, you know, overseeing digital at HBO and had done, even at Wonderland Productions, the company I started, we would do webisodes. Back in the day, webisodes.
Of course, webisodes were the thing. It was the vlogs, webisodes.
Yeah, webisodes. So, but this was the first time really stepping full, you know, both feet into a company that really never did television. They built their entire brand on YouTube. And so that was, and honestly, for the first 3 months, I had no idea what they were talking about. Right? I'm like,
they're like, we're going to do these KPIs.
KPIs and the miles and the miles. I'm like, what? And then, but the thing that I realized was like, they would put videos out and they'd reach 4, 5, 6 million people. Well, at HBO, when we put a documentary out, if we hit 1 million people, that was a huge success. And these videos are hitting 6, 7, 8 million. Some of them, you know, I produced one of the highest viewed videos out there called AJ Stunts, 19 million views.
Wow.
I mean, and so that's when it clicked. I'm like, so nobody's going to say we can or can't do it. We just put it out there and the audience, you know, it
they're
resonates.
Going to tell you what you want.
Can find your audience, right? And it's kind of almost a true meritocracy there, right? It's not, there's no politics, there's no agendas, there's nothing. You just put content out for your audience and they consume it and you have that relationship. And so I really liked that. I liked that a lot and I saw the potential, right? Because even the years before trying to sell, you know, and I was lucky to have sold, you know, 3 shows in my life. One of them got the plug pulled on it with Court TV. I did sell a show to Fox, Fox Sports, which was about the Hurricane Katrina and how they kind of utilized LSU as like a base camp. And then with a guy named Reggie Williams and Amani Martin, we sold a documentary to HBO called The Cutting Edge, which was about a barbershop on 125th Street in Harlem, which was awesome. And that was like 2006. Okay, so that's like 15 years, and I sold 3 shows. You know, so and when I was at GoPro, I did like 15 shows.
Wow.
So that's when to me, I'm like, you know, looking at being a storyteller, a filmmaker, and getting the stuff out so that people can see. It's a no-brainer. You know, I was always a YouTube fan. Once I got a taste of it, and I could see how it worked.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Sorry.
See, we got the dogs here.
Oh, you're welcome.
But they're part of the show.
Luna.
So I'm curious. When do you make the decision of investing in your own project? Because you were at GoPro, you loved your time there, and then you left. What are the attributes, the things that really you check off of your box and say, okay, I'm ready to kind of like step into this a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, you know, it's really looking at, and there's a lot of opportunities, and I get approached by a lot of people, right? So there's 2 different buckets of that. There's one for me in my career, right? Like, what am I doing? Right? It's like, it's crazy now after, you know, 35 years, people are like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm not quite sure. I don't know.
I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's all so crazy out there now. It's like, you know, I kind of do everything. But, you know, there's really no answer to that other than you have to have multiple balls in the air. I've got 5, 6, 7 things going right now, you know, and I'm trying to make a couple of them work, you know, but odds are, you know, if I have 8, you know, 7 are going to fall away. So it's a matter of, you know, really, it's a numbers game almost, right? Because we had a project that was like bulletproof.
Like
bro.
you're literally speaking into my, you know, literally where I wanted to go with this, because one of the reasons why I'm asking is because when we met, it was through a variety of our relationships, through a number of people, and it was for the Mike Vick documentary project. And I have a personal relationship with Mike. Him and I built a really, really strong relationship, and you know, responsible for bringing this documentary to life. And it's, it's been a number of years. And when we met, it was, we thought we had all the right parts. And it was like, okay, not only do we have the right parts, but now Mike is, going to be a coach at Norfolk. And, we had all this incredible content around it, the story. We go and pitch it, and no. From everyone. And, we were
even though they loved it.
And they loved
it. There was a love fest on the pitches, and then all of a sudden,
And one of the reasons why I'm asking the question is because I want people to also, if they're, everyone has ideas. Right? Everyone thinks they, have the next film or whatever, but there's the work that goes into it. And before you do the work, before you invest your money, which I invested plenty of money, Mike invested money. We really built this as a partnership together to get to that point. We really believe that this is a story that nobody has heard because they think they know.
Right.
But they, when you have a project, usually it's a producer who doesn't really know the talent.
Right.
And they kind of do, and they're interviewing them, and they're hoping they get vulnerable and all that. This is like, we've gone past that. There's like a deep relationship.
Sure.
And there's things that nobody knows. And it's just so tough to get people to see it.
Right?
That's right. And so through that, like you said, 15 years, 3 projects, and, investing in these items, it's so difficult to really see what other people see. So like, do you just stick to your guns? Like,
well, the whole pitch process is just crazy anyway, right? You pitch to somebody your idea, and then they have to go pitch to somebody else, but it's not even their idea, so you don't know if they had a good day or a bad day. It's just like, it's all crazy. So, and that's one route. We chose, hey, let's go shop this to distributors, right? And that's the traditional way. That's what everybody does. That's how you made money in the content world.
Right.
You don't need to do that today, and our conversation evolved into, well, hey, instead of going and licensing this thing, hey, maybe we should build an ecosystem for Mike.
Right.
And like Mr. Beast did.
Right.
And, like Dude Perfect did. And back to your point about ownership, right? And so to me, that's where you can have a couple different paths and a couple different projects that fit. This one may fit. Hey, this is a traditional path. Let's do that. This one, we may want to go raise money. This one, I may want to, I know that I can shoot and cut and put something out and get, which is kind of what we did with John Gruden.
Right.
The Gruden channel.
John Gruden project. Right.
I was involved with a couple of guys, and I went down, directed it, brought it back, cut it all together, with a guy Matt De La Rosa. And we crushed it, 250,000 subs in 8 weeks.
Right.
Monetize it, the whole thing, And we didn't get permission to do that. We just did it.
Right.
And so that's what I love, And I think more and more as the industry evolves and as the consumption habits of the audience changes, that's more of a viable route than it is to go and get a meeting with Netflix.
Right.
It just, that's been my experience.
Man, and I feel like this, where we are today, for those who are just starting or are, very nuanced in this space, right? They understand it. Like, people have the power to do quite a bit now. Obviously, everyone can record a video now. You can make a movie, right, on 4K. Your iPhone in 4K and edit it in CapCut or whatever editing program you want. To get through is nearly impossible for an average Joe.
That's right.
Relationships matter the most. Tell me about your philosophy around relationships in this industry and why that's so important to you.
Yeah, look, I think it goes back to trust, right? You trust your guy.
That guy.
And you can have a great pitch and you don't know this person, and you can have a mediocre pitch and he's your boy, or, she's your, friend, and you're going to, and I don't want to put a blanket statement over development executives, but, it just seems that that's the way it is. Right? And it just keeps getting proven and proven over and over again, because I have put content out that has been rejected, and I know it's no business, not show business, it's no business, but it's still good and it resonates. And if they would have made the decision, it would have done great for their network. And I've done it for HBO, I've done it for the NFL. Like, it's not like I haven't done it before. It's just a matter of whether people are going to why people didn't buy that Mike Vick project. I have no idea. I really don't. And I don't think they can answer it either.
Right.
But those are the things that you can't control, And then who would have thought that I would make a documentary about a barbershop on 125th Street?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So you can't tell. But for me, and for, people in my circle, I think it's about that ownership. And you were talking about it too. All of these brands now, you got Under Armour, you got Dick's, you got Chick-fil-A, they're all opening their own kind of studios. What they'll do with it, who knows? But the idea of what they want and should do with it is right on. They're owning their own stuff and being their own distributor. Right. And that's where you can show up in a 360-degree way. It's not about just Netflix or just about YouTube. It should be about all of it. Right. I mean, you look at a Mr. Beast and he's 360 degrees, including the business behind it, which is really what content's about today. It's using content to stand up a business and drive revenue. Right. It's not selling the content. A lot of my conversations now with different clients are about, hey, this is my business. How do I use content? Okay, this is how we do it. Right? You want to sell tickets? We need content to sell tickets. It's all about content today. Content and marketing are one. Right. So going back to your point, it's really about what's the purpose, right? What's the business idea? And what is content's role in that?
What did you take with you that worked in the NFL and what didn't work?
Yeah. So, coming into the NFL, I had two positions at the NFL. My first role there for the first 2 years, I was VP of marketing for NFL media. So I oversaw all the creative and advertising for Thursday Night Football, for all the digital products, for the network, all that stuff. And then the second 2 years I was there, I was the head of development. So I kind of transitioned into more strategy. When I was in marketing, one of the projects that I, was responsible for was marketing the Super Bowl. I forget, it might have been the Patriots and the Rams in Atlanta. And so somebody on my team used to be a Dude Perfect guy, and he said, hey, Dude Perfect is? He's like, we should do a collab with him. I'm like, you're absolutely right, we should. Yeah. Right? So got in touch with Dude Perfect. They're all stoked about it. We're going to go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium and we're going to do a Super Bowl trick shot video. Yeah. Right. But here's the deal. We're going to pay them, well into the six figures. They're going to own the content and it's going to be on their channels. Right. From the NFL. It's like, what? We don't own it? It's not on our channels? I'm like, no, man. No, we want to be in front of their audience. This is almost like a time buy on their channels. Yeah. Right. And so we did it. 26 million views in 1 week, in the first week. Wow. Give me that CPM every single day. Yeah. For what I paid and the amount of impressions that I got. And not only the impressions, but the impressions with the audience that had been so elusive to the NFL, right? That really kind of ate to 18-year-old. Like if you don't get an NFL fan by the time he or she is 12, there's a big chance that they're not going to be an NFL fan. Yeah. So tapping into the Dude Perfect world, this way it's like a Trojan horse, right? So now, we dropped the basketball off of the roof of the stadium onto the 50-yard line. Now, it took 3 hours to do it, but we cut it together. But it was very successful, and it was thinking, in that digital first way. Like, okay, looking at the audience, who are the superstars today? Dude Perfects are, right? Yeah. The AMPs, the Kai Cenats, the FaZe Clans. Right. Those are what this young generation is looking up to. Right. And so you have to integrate into that if you want to create fans. Right. So that was really one of the things that I was most proud of at the NFL, just doing that collaboration.
What do you think was like a point that was kind of like a failure that you're like, man, I wish I had a bit more control?
Yeah. Well,
that you can say.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, it's, and I understand it, right? The NFL is just an enormously successful operation. They're the gold standard.
It's the shield.
It's the shield, right?
And in all the good ways. Yeah. And for some people, it's, they'll think of it in their own ways that are bad, but a business is a business, and it's an empire that's global at this point.
Roger Goodell, is the most successful commissioner in the history of the league from a financial standpoint. What he's brought into there, so I get it. I just move a little faster. They're not that nimble.
Speed.
And I want to do things, and there's a little bit more of process in there, right? And especially, when I was there, it was during the Colin Kaepernick years. So it was an incredible case study on crisis PR, on, a brand like the NFL losing fans, right? Which they'd never had done that before. Right. And just being in the middle of a political mess, which was like, hey, let's get the hell out of this.
Yeah.
But it was so valuable to me to see how that organization handled it, whether you agree with them or not, like the decisions that were being made. So there was so much that I took from the NFL, but I just felt constrained. I couldn't go and do the things that I really wanted to do, which ironically I was able to do at the XFL.
Right.
And they were tremendously successful.
Right.
So I knew that they were going to work. It's just, early adapters. It's not, the NFL is not going to be that first one.
For sure. Yeah, they're trying to be a bit more innovative with the XFL because they need to get some kind of market share.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, it was, the brilliant thing, I worked on both XFLs. The Vince McMahon version in 2001.
Okay. I was going to ask about that because I was curious. Which version?
Oh yeah. I worked on that version. I was an editor in the truck, and that first weekend was incredible.
Right.
And then it just kind of fell off the cliff. Yeah. But the difference was, that version of the XFL was Vince McMahon. It was extreme football. Right. We got violent, and then people came to see it, and they're like, oh, these are just guys that didn't make the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay. You know. Where the XFL pivoted, and this is really kind of Dwayne Johnson, Russ Brandon, Danny Garcia, was that, they want to make a spot for player 54 to 100.
Yeah,
right?
No, I love that.
And so now, let's not compete. Let's be that development system. Yep. Dwayne Johnson, his story of being player 54, what he brought, his kind of just sentiment to the players and giving opportunity was it. Yeah. And it worked. Yeah. And so, again, a great kind of lab. Yeah. I'm a football guy. I love football. I played college. My kids play. I coached them. Yeah. I just love football. Yeah. And to be able to have, the shackles off and be able to kind of do what I did, and Russ Brandon, I'm grateful to him. It was amazing. Yeah. And it was really, really successful. And the players were happy.
That's what I feel like. It's product. Culture, right? I think those are the two most important things. The culture creates, the opportunity for the product to continue to expand. And I think they hit that. And then they did the partnership that continued to expand, their player base and being able to get more and more like active players who I think will support and increase the level of the product. And they're looking at it long term.
Yeah, I mean, they basically merged with the USFL, right? And so now there's one spring league, which makes sense, know. And so they're growing. They're growing this year. You know, they've added 2 more teams, so 2 or 4 more teams. So there is an audience for spring football
for sure.
There really is, and it's interesting how you can position that next to the most popular sport in the world. So.
Yeah, you hit on a couple of things I think that matters, I think, for a lot of folks. Metrics. I think content, you can go and create content all you want, right? But the beauty and the power of what we have in our hands today is the metrics that help inform you to make better decisions. Oh, yeah. Whether you have a business or you're an influencer or it could be the smallest business. You can have a cupcake shop, whatever you want. You have to understand that the metrics matter. And it's not necessarily just like, hey, I'm not going to succeed because I don't have a ton of views. It's frequency. It's when you're posting. It's how you edit. It's the content that you're kind of like really leaning into, the captions, all that stuff. Yep. I think all of that matters. So when you were really developing and creating this content, are you thinking of not just the metrics, but how that will inform the creative?
Yes, 100%. It's always an audience first process for me, right? So looking at, okay, what is the audience? What kind of content do they want? And also which platform? Again, it's got to be all of them. But when I'm watching YouTube, I'm not in the same mood as when I'm watching Instagram.
Right. Right. And TikTok is going to be a bit different. Exactly.
So
Twitter,
you got to show up natively on that platform in an organic way. Metrics can tell a bunch of stories, right? And we always say, oh yeah, you went from 1 follower to 2, you got 50% growth, right? Which is like, all right, well, the 1 to 2 isn't bad, but the 50% is good, right? Like that's a good one to focus on. But really, that's kind of how you have to tell the story, right? Like, where is it? And for me, I always use it's a 3-step process. It's engage, monetize, optimize, right? And so, hey, let's find the audience out there first, right? Let's engage them.
Yeah.
And then once we engage them, we can start to monetize them, and not in a bad way, but just kind of look at different revenue streams that we can activate in that audience that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And then the optimization comes in, right? Because now you got your rough cut, you're seeing how it's all working, and the beauty of digital is you can move it in real time.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, this thumbnail's not working. We're going to A/B test. I mean,
Yeah.
just the developments in that alone, natively in YouTube, it's all happening, right? So the ability to not fly blind. Now, there's the other piece of that too, right? Where it kind of removes the gut and the humanity from it, right? Because yes, numbers are numbers, but if they said that about The Godfather, they would have never made the movie.
Right. Well, that's exactly why I wanted to get there.
Right.
Because for me, like even with Messy Middle, like, it wasn't, for me, I was like, all right, I want to do something that has a little more nuance, have some more conversations that really like unpacks, et cetera, et cetera. And I did not say like, it needs to have this and this and this before, to tell me if it's successful. And I enjoyed that approach to it because I kind of felt a bit more free. And I still am very early. But seeing the metrics and the growth, I was like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
This is kind of working, huh?
Yeah.
And so to see that when you're talking about GoPro, millions of views, the NFL, Dude Perfect, all of those things help kind of like give you the confidence.
That's right.
And as a creative,
right,
and the things that we are going through on a day-to-day when we're trying to get people to see our vision, how do you deal with the mental part of rejection, of that level of what people think would be failure or failure in your mind? Like, what are you doing internally, that's doing that work? Yeah,
that's it. That's a tough one, right? Because I think mental health is such an issue just globally, right? We're more aware of it. Rejection's hard.
Yeah.
It really is. When I believe in something, I mean, I feel like I've dealt with rejection my entire life from, when I didn't start on the football team, right? And I'm like, wait, I should be starting. It's like, it's the same sort of feeling that I have, that it almost motivates me more to disprove you. Like I said, hey, you're going to say no to this? Well, let me go make it and show you that it works.
Right.
And so I think for me, I don't let that bother me at all because I know I can create something. I know I can drive audiences. I know I can build revenue. It's just really about, and we talk about this, the education gap today between management and executives and what's really going on and how the ecosystem and content is working. I think that's part of it. And do I get upset? Sure. But, I don't, again, I use it as fuel. And I've really, and I know you have been doing a lot more spiritual kind of introspective looking and how we deal with life and how we attach and detach from certain things. So it's a work in progress, man. I'm a work in progress when it comes to mental health.
We all are. We all are.
I'm not perfect. I would say this: in my 20s and 30s, I was much more full of piss and vinegar than I am today.
Well, because my thing was just like, what did the 20-something version of you though? Like what they would say to this question? Because it's like, you are, the grays look good on you. You know what I mean? And you've experienced. But that 20-something-year-old, I was, we were talking about it. Like I was arrogant. Yeah. And admittedly so. Like I knew that. Yeah. And I actually used that to some extent in my advantage because everyone's going to try to, the first thing they're going to try to do, and this is psychological, maybe it's because of society, maybe it's just innate in us as human beings, but the first thing somebody wants to tell you is how it's not going to work. Totally. Right? And that was my whole entire approach was to, it's coming. And I'm going to create this like defense mechanism. It's like, nope. Yep. Right. And so as we grow, we learn that we have no control and just accept the ride. That's right. And we know nothing. And that's right. Let go of the wheel. Yeah. Let go of the wheel. But how do you deal with that when you're talking to some kid who thinks that this video, them getting 10,000 views is make or breaking their careers? Yeah. Right? It's hard because, by the way, the 20 and 30-year-old version of myself, I have walked out of edits and I've gotten to some scraps. Great, I love that. But
It's hard. And that was one of the things when I went to GoPro, right? You think about what they built before I got there. And literally there were still, young people who were living in vans in the parking lot, and all of a sudden here come these HBO and these new, because GoPro had hired like 1,500 people to stand up this entertainment unit that they wanted.
Wow.
So there's a lot of us that came in. And, for those, I don't want to call them kids, but they were young people who, what they built, and now you got us coming in, right? It was a really, really hard transition. And it took a long time for people to buy. And some people didn't buy into what we were doing, and some people did, and some people didn't buy into certain people. But probably one of the things I'm most proud of is when I did leave GoPro, I got handwritten notes from everybody on my team, which is probably about 25 people, thanking me for my mentorship, for teaching them, for guiding them, and just kind of helping them, advance their career. To me, that was like, wow. Yeah. Because it's one of the hardest things. I can't do an editor, make a shooter do that and say, hey, this is how you do it. You have to relate to them, and they're in they were 24, I was 45. Yeah. So how do you do that? And again, it goes back to, it's like, just having the trust in the creative process and understanding, like you said, I don't know everything. Like when I was at FaZe Clan, honestly, some of these guys would come up and say, hey, is this a good edit? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't watch that stuff, But if you think it's good, then I trust you because you're my guy. Yeah. And that's the release that you have to be a good leader. Yeah. When I was at NBC and Dick Ebersol would come into the edit, he wasn't a jerk, He was like, oh, this is good. And I'm like, yeah, okay. It was very collaborative. Steve Sable the same way. Wow. And that's what
solid names, man.
Yeah, man. And those are the people I try and emulate, right? And so that's what I want to be to this next generation. And honestly, for the last 12 years, that's who I've been working with. Yeah. And really diving into this digital YouTube world to try and, when I was at the NFL, try and inject that there. Yeah. At the XFL, trying to inject that there. I brought Destroying in. We did a whole bunch of activations with Destroying. And the next year he was in the league as a kicker, we had a content house. It was all of those things. Yeah. So,
and I was going to say that stuff is, it's like a limitless potential that is created in the space that we're in right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And trying to empower someone, because some people will be like, well, what the hell does a director do? Mm-hmm. And you're obviously way more seasoned than I am. But I'll give you my perspective, my definition of what I have learned is my goal is just to empower others to be at their best. So identify, are they capable? And then give them the space, right, to work. Yeah. And I feel like someone who accepts that they're being a mentor without saying like, yes, I will be your mentor. Right. It's not that. Yeah. It's like you just feel it. Yeah. That's the level of the gut part of it. I think that matters, which creates better relationships, which is based on trust, right? To kind of like bring it full circle to you. Yeah. What do you think about director and that level of like mentorship? Yeah.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think it depends on where you're directing and what you're directing, right?
That also matters.
But that's the way I look at directing, right? And I see you're over here tweaking shots, and you're giving your insight, and you have a vision too as a director, right? And that's really important, right? And that's the trust that we get as directors from our subjects when we're doing documentaries, like the Mike Vick thing, the trust. If he didn't trust you, we would have never, gone down that road. Yeah. And so as the director, you have a responsibility to that person and that vision. But you also have a responsibility to yourself. And like you said, the crew, like hiring people. As a director, I don't want to sit and micromanage. I want to bring my team in and say, this is what we're doing. Right. And go. And everybody has their lanes to do it. And, that's where I a lot of the times I say, hey, it's like the maestro. Like I'm the best when I'm the maestro. Don't put me in the violin section. Don't put me in the string section. Yeah. Let me kind of conduct the whole thing. Yeah. Right. And that's where, that's what Wonderland was. Yeah. That's what FaZe Clan was. That's what the XFL was, and so I think that as a director, it's kind of inherent in who I am. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't actually think I was going to go here with this, but I am because we're here. Yeah. And it's great. Yeah. When I was, as I was working on the Mike project, I was directing it, right? And, kind of like doing that whole thing. And so when I was introduced to you, it was like, hey, can you talk to Bill, from the guys, like, we think we'd get a better offer and, more stability as he was the director. And it took me a second. I was like, damn.
Right.
And I've spent a lot of time reading about ego and the ego death and, all that kind of stuff. And I totally recognized it was my ego first. It was just like, damn, am I going to really let this thing go? I've spent this time and energy and all that stuff. Yeah. And I had a conversation with Mike about it too. Because I was like, after we talked and everything, I had a conversation with him, but it took me a second. But I also know that I'm only one part of a team and I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to find the success that I want by myself. Yeah. And the conversation we had, it was the first one we had. Yeah. And I was like, this is a good dude. Yeah. And I trusted Kevin and the guys, when it came to like, hey, have the conversation and just see. And it was the intention, the conversation, and the way you kind of, just made sure I understood like, hey, dude, like it's team effort. I definitely want you to be, involved through the process. And for me, it was like just a little couple of things, and I was like, I'm cool. Yeah, good. Yeah. It's easy. I'm always going to be a team player, but I know that I'm still going to be a part of it. Yeah. And it's not like anything's being taken away from me. Right. But I wanted to be that because we're sitting here talking about directing and all that stuff. And again, I really didn't think I would, but I just wanted to say that to you because I thought that was the way you kind of like approached it. Yeah. Was like super compassionate and very like attentive to kind of the the feeling of it all.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. And look, I've been in these situations before, and it's not easy, having your baby and then having somebody coming in to breastfeed it. What? No, this is my baby,
I never visualized it like that. But
but that's it. And so I get that. And that's not my style anyway, right? We've become fast friends and, we're going to work together and all that stuff. So I love the collaboration process. And even if you're in the edit with me, it's like, you like this shot? You don't like that? Yeah. Tell me what, you know what I mean? Like it's collaborative. Mm-hmm. I enjoy that. It's not like I'm this, taskmaster. Everything's got to be, if you go into a documentary like that, you're not going to get the best film because, I'm going to tell you a story. I had sold a documentary about something else, genetics. Mm-hmm. And this LSU story kind of came up just because we were interviewing one of the state troopers. And he said, oh, you should have seen it. There was a triage after Katrina and all this stuff. And so we were able to pivot to do that. But we had to release what we thought the film was and go with where the actual film was. Wow. You know what I mean? That. And as a filmmaker, you have to allow the organism to breathe and like evolve. And, so we were saying maybe the Mike Vick project is evolving. It's growing in ways we can't see. Right. And the timing will work out. Right. You have to have the confidence and the trust that will happen. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very cool about that.
And I would say one other thing too, right as soon as we started speaking and I got to know you a little bit, you're an artist, right? And I know we talked about this. I consider myself an artist too. Yeah. And it is personal. That's the art of it, bro. Right? It's like we've been working on this stuff. It's like, you're working on a painting for 6 months or a year and somebody else we're going to finish it for you. Yeah. Like, what? Yeah. No, okay, So, and that's good. That's your passion. Yeah. Right? That's what AI can't bring to it. That's where the magic actually happens is in that commitment, that dedication, that passion for what you're doing. And that comes out on the screen. Yeah. Right? You said before, culture over strategy every day of the week, man. Give me that culture. The best projects that I've worked on may not have been the biggest budget, but had always that chemistry, that vibe that was intangible, that you're like, it just came through onto the screen, and that's so important. And that's who you are. And that's why we connected, man. Cause this guy gets it, man, And so I hope we can, from day one, I wanted to work together on stuff. So
I appreciate you saying that. It's like creativity is such a powerful thing. I think everyone has it. Yeah. And growing up, I was born in Lebanon, and I bring it up, in every show, I think it's important. And Immigrant Story is a very unique one.
Yeah.
But this idea of like, can you make money doing it was crazy to me. But I always felt like I could. You know, I think anybody who's from the Middle East always knows, like, you're going to be a doctor or an engineer.
Right.
Maybe a dentist.
Yeah.
But you're actually going to be your career.
Yeah.
Maybe a lawyer, you know? And for me, it was none of that stuff. It was like, I'm going to be a professional wrestler. I want to be in the WWE or the NFL. And I found out I couldn't be in the NFL because, you know, they don't take people who are 5'6". But I was like, maybe I can be in the WWE.
Yeah.
And over time, I learned creative through the WWE. And I just loved the idea of the theater and the quick character development and all of this stuff. And I saw all of these things that moved me. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I could do it.
Yeah.
And I could find a career in it.
Yeah.
And I had nobody teaching me these things. But the reason why I wanted to do this is because there is a method to a madness. And you're not going to know it off top, you know, because you went from all these major corporations, and FaZe was one of those first of the influencers who really kind of brought it up. And I talked with Zach Katz, who was our first episode, you know, about it. And although his time was short at FaZe, he learned a lot.
Totally.
And it informed his next move. So did it inform your next move when you were at FaZe? Because you're pushing the boundaries, you're trying things that are outside the box.
Oh yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. Yeah, you know, having that mixture of traditional and digital and you know, creator experience was huge for me. You know, it was really, I think, what sold you know, Russ and DJ and Danny on bringing me into the XFL. You know, because I said, hey, we can bring Destroying. You know, Destroying. We just made him a FaZe member. You know, he's the biggest football content creator on YouTube.
Right.
And so these are the ideas that we were allowed to do. You know, and like, by the way, I saw Destroying on the NFL YouTube broadcast.
Did you?
Right?
Yeah, that was a crazy broadcast. I thought about you when I saw him.
Quick story here. So when I first started at GoPro, we were doing, you know, I was the Team Sports EP, and we were doing something on Patrick Peterson, who was a cornerback for the Cardinals.
Pat Peterson, man, yeah.
Right? So I called NFL Films, and I'd already won a couple Emmys with NFL Films, and I did it inside the NFL, so I had a relationship with them. Yeah. And I said, hey, Linda, you know, we want to license some of this Patrick Peterson footage on that GoPro. And she's like, oh, where's it going to air? I said, well, you know, on our YouTube channel. No, you know, we don't license our footage to free platforms. I'm like, but I actually have a budget this time. You know, I've got money to spend. And they would not license it to me. 10 years later, this past September, what's on YouTube? A game, an NFL game.
Yeah, that's with influencers on the sideline.
Influencers on this, Mr. Beast, Destroyer.
Yeah.
What? In 10 years, we've done a complete 180 from not licensing film or, you know, NFL films on free platforms to now having the holy grail.
Yeah, literally the actual game. Yeah.
So
multiple broadcasts.
Incredible. Yeah. Right. It's just how far we've come. I always think that that's a really funny story.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. Now I forgot the original question.
Yeah. Sorry, man. I did cut you off.
No. FaZe. Yeah. What did it teach you? Sorry.
What did it teach me?
Yeah. Moving, you know, that pivot point that kind of brought you. So you obviously brought DJ and XFL. And kind of like how that kind of like, but your DNA being across all of it all. What did it inform your next move?
Well, you know, it really, to me, opened my eyes completely to this new creator world.
Yeah.
Right. Like working with the Jesse Sebastianis from Nelk Boys. And you know, we had Mr. Beast come to I designed a studio in Hollywood. But really the experience that I think was probably invaluable was bringing them public, you know, like bringing FaZe Clan public.
Yeah.
And coming up with the business plan and the revenue streams to make that happen. So I did a lot of work in that end of it, which really was great because I'm doing a lot of fundraising and the same sorts of conversations now. So that was something that I didn't have a lot of experience in. We went public at GoPro, but that was just before I got there. But going through that process of dealing with investors and bringing, you know, a company public
Yeah.
was really, really educational.
Yeah. You know, I didn't know to what extent you were kind of like in the thick of adrenaline and if you did work with companies or if you were like part of companies that were raising before. So I have a few times and a lot of them did not secure their raises. And so it was like, oh, well, you know.
Yep.
So, so that's fascinating. And I'm curious, since you're going to be in charge of essentially building content, you know, your decisions are going to be based around building the content org.
Yep.
Like what is something that you look for in somebody or the team that you really want to see them, you know, bring to life for the organization?
For any organization or for adrenaline?
For adrenaline.
Yeah.
What is it going to be the thing that you're going to, what's going to be the thing that you're going to look for?
Well, I mean, you know, I found it a year ago. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be with them right now, you know, but they've got a subculture out there. They've got an audience that exists, right? That is starving for this content. You know, they put out a promo video, over 300 million views.
Wow.
We already got over 600 million impressions on the event that we just did.
Yeah, I've seen it. It was
huge in Asia,
involvement.
You know, Korea, Japan, China. So for me, there's a there, you know?
Got it.
Now, talk about Jimmy and McGuire, Kane. Again, you go back to that trust. It's like, you know, I feel that connection with them. I believe in them, you know?
Yeah.
And I know how to make it happen for them, you know? They've got the qualities that are intangible, that you look for in young leaders and people that you can believe in. Plus, they have the credibility in that space as well. So I love that. You know, having the conversations with the investors was incredible. They were all into it. And so for me, it's about, you know, not just making the great content, but building the business behind it. Right. And so, you know, I'm under NDA, so I can't say, but it's not all about content. You know, there are other things. Now, content's going to be the glue that holds everything together and how we communicate. But there is a business plan behind that that will be, you know, pretty robust.
Yeah. That's amazing. I look forward to hearing and seeing it, and then when we do work together on it, because I believe we will. Yeah. And when we're looking at, you know, as we're getting closer to closing out here, I'm just curious, when you look at the totality of the work that you're doing and the work that what you've done and the work that you're going to be doing, you know, that old adage of like unlearning something. You know, I always hear that, like, man, I wish I could have unlearned that. Yeah. My first job, my first like career role was being what was called an imaging director, but it was like a production director or creative director for a radio station in Seattle. And it was after this, you know, I had this internship with them, and they said something to me that always stuck with me that I have used when I look for people on my staff at times. And they hired me, and the two bosses who were essentially became mentors to me, Eric and Vic, they said to me, you know, we wanted to hire you because you didn't have the radio baggage. You didn't learn radio yet. Because what radio was, we don't want that. We want something completely different. And I was the youngest of any major market station in all of iHeart, Clear Channel at the time. And I never understood. I was like, oh, cool, great. Like, I just wanted the job. I didn't even negotiate. They told me no. I was like, sure, let's go. You know? But for you, like, what is it if you could like unlearn something that you had over your career at this point?
You know, I don't think I would want to unlearn anything because every experience, good or bad for me, has made me who I am today. And like I said, you know, I've worked for some really terrible people, and I've done things the wrong way because I was forced to do it. But to me, that was almost a gift because I'm like, oh my God, I will never do it this way. Or it showed me, hey, just because he has this title doesn't mean that he's right. You know what I mean? And so I think every lesson is valuable, and everything, it's just a matter of how you know, it's the age old in corporate America. Well, we do it this way because we've always done it that way. Okay, well then you're not going to evolve. You know? So if you have that attitude, and I don't, you know, I trust, and it was something that for me, it wasn't difficult to hand the keys over to the younger generation to create content, you know, because I'm secure in myself. You know, I know I can cut, know I could shoot. You know, it wasn't a competition. We're trying to create something. So, you know, the unlearning, there's really probably more in my younger days, when I like you said, the arrogance and all that stuff. That's what now, in later in life, you're starting to understand that, hey, you got to let go. Right.
Release. Yeah.
So that is something that the stress and the boxes that people put you in, right, and that competition is something that is probably necessary to go through to get to the other side.
Of course.
To be who we are. So. Yeah. I wouldn't want to unlearn anything. Yeah. I think it's all valuable.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
No, I love that. That's exactly what I would have loved to hear from you.
Yeah.
Last 2 questions. First one, what do the Emmys mean to you? You've won 11.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like when someone says Emmy Award, I'm like, oh.
Yes.
What do they represent for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a really good question. And look, I'm proud as hell, right? I've won Emmys in different roles, right? My first one, I won as an editor. Didn't even know you can win one as an editor, right? It was just just as shocked as everybody else. I had the privilege of working with guys like Joe Levine, Kirby Bradley at HBO, where, it's just incredible content. Now, I will say that I've won as a director, as a composer, as an editor, and as a creative director.
It's amazing.
So the one that's the most special to me, I think, is the composer.
Yeah,
right?
I knew you were gonna say it.
It's just like, holy shit, somebody likes my music.
Yeah.
And it's like, right? I mean, we're all so insecure musicians, and like when I win an award for the music, so that'll always have a place in my heart. Yeah. And that was a New York Emmy for a series called Street Games that we did. And it was just, that one will always be special to me.
That's cool. I love that.
Yeah.
That's the best answer.
Yeah.
I think the last question I always like to leave with is one that it's always interesting to hear everybody's answer. But what is the question that we aren't asking each other enough?
That's a really good one. That's a really good one. How about this? How can I help? I don't think we ask each other that enough. I think we're all so conditioned and we're fed these structures and that force us to compete, that force us to act in ways that we're not supposed to act, particularly in corporate America, which I think is, I won't go into it, but, the intention is there. Let me just put it through my lens. When I was in those roles, I was always there to help people, help my staff. It was more, probably my biggest flaw is I don't manage up very well, because I take care of my team and that is my priority. And, I expect that my boss would have the trust in me and give me the autonomy that I need to be successful. Not that I don't have relationships. I had a great relationship with DJ, with Russ Brandon, with Rick Bernstein. But it's not about getting ahead for me. It's about watching other people succeed. And, we're all afraid to ask for help, and sometimes we need it, man. Yeah. And it's interesting because back in the day, they used to call them hooks. Who's your hook? Who's the guy that's up there that's going to hook and bring you up?
I never heard that one before.
Yeah, they were the hooks, and it was like, and when you look out today, like, do we have mentors as executives? Like, who are our executive mentors? Gary Vee, okay, I don't know if he's an executive, right? But who are our mentors? You look at these executives and I mean, I don't want to be like them, right? Yeah. And so I think it all goes back to the humanity and helping each other, because I don't think we ask each other if we need help enough. And we all need help, man. Yeah. It takes a village, man. You can't do this thing by yourself. Yeah. You just can't. And once you have the trust in other people and you got to be there for them too, And so that to me is it's like, how can I help? Yeah. How can I help? I wish people would ask more of those types of questions.
Well, not surprised. That was an amazing answer. I completely agree. I appreciate your time again.
Yeah.
Man. It's great to dig in with you a little bit more. I think one of the things that has stood out for me that I've enjoyed the most about doing this is we're having like intentional conversations with people that I've known, but not as well, And when I go into this level of conversation, there's so much more that is discovered
Yeah.
through it, and that has been healing, been exciting. It's made me think. It's made me better, and it continues to make me think about, okay, how can we help a bit more, through these conversations. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, thanks for the platform, and like I said, I love it, and best of luck, and I know we will do some great shit together.
Yeah, my man. Appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate you, man.
Love it.